Hey, TechKnowStuds. And when I say studs, I mean both students, and you are awesome. Thanks for joining me in these videos. You know, I could have a very security conscious company or organization. What I mean by that is we could make all the right steps to reduce the amount of risk we have within the company, protecting customer data, protecting our employee data, and making sure that risk is at a minimal amount. But if I'm choosing the wrong products or services from the wrong vendors, then that can open us up for risk. Let's say I have customer data that I'm storing up in the cloud in some sort of cloud technology, and they mistreat that data and expose our customer data. That comes back on our organization. So what I need to do is I need to make sure that I assess these vendors and the whole supply chain to make sure that there's no security risks with it. So in this module, we're going to cover vendor and supply chain management. Even though this module is going to primarily focus on vendor and supply chain management, we're actually going to look at all of the business relationships. What a vendor is somebody that we're purchasing products and services from. So they're delivering products and services to us so that way we can utilize them and deliver it to our clients. But just like we're going to analyze our vendors and make sure that they're secure in what they're supplying us, we also are going to have clients that are monitoring us and what we are doing from a security standpoint. And so really when we're talking about vendors and assessing vendors and making sure that they're secure vendors, we're also going to have a very similar process for how our clients view us and approach us. Not to mention also partners that our company might partner with other businesses and what this looks like from a partner standpoint. So we're going to tackle it from all angles here. One example of that is the agreements and documents. A lot of the same agreements and documents are going to be set up between these different relationships. As an example is our company may require a non-disclosure agreement from our vendor. That is that we are going to turn over some sensitive information to this vendor, and we're going to require them to make sure that they don't turn that information over to anybody else. They're not going to disclose that information to anyone else. Well, the same thing, the clients may require that of us as well. And certainly the same thing between two companies when they're partnered together. So this module is really all about that relationship management, how we're going to manage relationships between our company or organization and other companies and organizations or our clients and customers. We're going to kick this module off by going over vendor management, just a high-level view of what vendor management actually looks like. Then we'll get into gathering requirements, what we're going to assess these different vendors on and how we gather requirements to assess those different vendors. Then we'll talk about the vendor assessment specifically and what vendor assessment looks like. Then we're going to get into cloud computing because a lot of times we're utilizing services up in the cloud, and we want to make sure we assess those services up in the cloud and understand where our responsibility is and where the cloud provider's responsibility is. We call that the shared responsibility model. And then we'll get into supply chain management. When a vendor supplies a product or service to us, they're going to be utilizing other products and services to deliver that product and service to us. Well, that's called the supply chain. So we're going to get into a supply chain, what it is, and how we would analyze that supply chain and look for weaknesses or vulnerabilities in it. Then we're going to get into vendor selection, selecting the right vendor. And if we've done everything properly up to this point, this could be an easy decision and very evident on which vendor we should select. And then we'll talk about agreement types, because once we select a vendor, we're going to have to set up some contracts and what is going to be the agreements between the two entities. Then we'll get into vendor monitoring, what it is that we have to monitor on an ongoing basis to make sure that the vendor is still meeting our needs and that they're following up or doing everything that they agreed upon doing for our company. And then we'll also talk about vendor termination, because just like everything else, this is a life cycle. A vendor has a beginning to it, a middle to it, and an end to it. So we want to manage everything from the beginning to all the way to the end and making sure that they are remaining secure. In the end, you're going to have this great view of how you're going to analyze the vendors to make sure that they're going to supply things correctly to you, and also have a good understanding of what clients might be looking at your company and how they would be assessing your company and how to set up some of these partnerships.